put it in another and get a second hive going. It reduces the chance of your hive swarming, and that way you keep your bees in your yard. So I'm just getting the smoky going, and what we're going to do is put the entrance of the hive. It'll have a nice effect on your bees. Now if you wear a good bee suit, wear your gloves, make sure you are protecting yourself. So I'm going to be running through the basics of a hive split. 3 good puffs right in the entrance, leave your smoker there so the return get a sip of the smoke and for a nice to work with. So the basics of a hive split is taking some of the frames out of the bottom box and putting them into a new box. And if those frames have eggs down the bottom, which looks like a tiny grain of rice, the bees are clever enough to raise a new queen from those eggs, and then your split is up and away and you have a second hive. Great thing to do in the spring as a piece of spring management. Otherwise, if you've got a lot of bees in your box and it's springtime, chances are half of them are going to take off as a swarm, and then you'll lose half your bees. But let's have a look here in the windows first, just to have a look at what's going on in this hive. Now, I'm seeing a lot of nectar coming in, which is fantastic, and that's what's been stimulating the queen to lay more eggs and the population to expand. If we go around the other side, let's have a look. We're trying to gauge how many bees are in this hive. Whoa, look at that. You cannot even see the comb surface on this side because there's so many bees in there. So a good idea to get ahead of the curve, get prepared, and have your box ready so when your hive has a lot of bees in it and it's springtime, you can then take a split. So we're almost in spring here in the southern hemisphere, but as far as Apis mellifera is concerned, it is springtime already. So very exciting time for a beekeeper. What you'll need to do your split is a baseboard like this. In this case, it's our Flow Up 2 Plus with our integrated pest management screen bottom board. And we've got a tray in the bottom. Now, a good idea to put a bit of cooking oil in the tray, because when your hive is weak, if you've got lots of hive beetles in the area, then catch some of those. Give your bees a hand by putting some cooking oil in the tray below. And the same goes for the hive that you're taking some frames from, because all of a sudden it'll have a drop in numbers, and that's when pests like the hive beetle can take over. So next you'll need a brood box complete with brood frames. So you'll need a full rack of brood frames, and we've got our entrance reducer on there, which we could use, but we could also leave that off here in this climate. Now, we don't often use them here, but if you're having issues with robbing and things, you could put that on. Next, you'll need your inner cover and then your gabled roof. And of course, you need your bee suit, have your gloves at the ready, and a brush is useful, plus the J-Hive tool. Okay. So, first of all, we're going to remove the honey super from this hive and put it aside. And that will give us access to the brood nest down here with the wooden wax frames, and we're simply going to take some of them out and put them in this box. And today, we're going to let them raise their own queen. But if you wanted some known genetics, you'd be buying in a new queen from a queen breeder. And that will more guarantee you a nice, calm, productive, healthy hive. We're going to take a gamble and let them raise their own this time, and we'll see how they go. So, don't forget, put your bee bail on, do all your zips up, because when you're doing a hive split, you'll have bees going everywhere. There we go. Okay, Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us okay. And we may be having some technical issues here. And we'll get that sorted for you in just a moment. So, first of all, the roof comes off. Put that aside. Then we're going to be levering off the inner cover, although we don't need to inspect the flow frames today, so we might just leave it on. That way there's less bees going everywhere. Keep our smoker going. If it's been sitting around, it might need a few puffs. Then we're going to be going around to each corner and just loosening it up so we can remove this top box. So around we go, just like that. Looks like it's coming off okay. Sometimes they can be very much stuck on with the bees propolis and wax, but I should just be able to lean this back now. Now it's heavy because there's a lot of honey in there, and what I'm going to do is just rest it on its end over here, and that way honey won't spill out of the frames because I've kept them in the same plane. Next, we're going to take off the inner cover, and if you've got questions, put it in the comments. We'll answer those as we go. Take off the excluder, sorry. So we're just peeling it off slowly and gently. All movements in beekeeping are slow and gentle, unless you're trying to get bees off something, in which case you're giving it a good sharp shake. Have a quick look for the queen on the underside to make sure you're not orphaning her from the hive. And always rest it up against the hive in case she's there. She can walk back in. So we're seeing a lot of bees here, which is fantastic. Now this hive, we've done some spring management to already. We cut some comb out on one live stream, we've harvested a few frames on another, and they're still building up. So the next thing we're going to do is take a split, which is my preferred method to reduce the chances of swarming. And if you don't want another hive, somebody else surely will. In fact, you can often get somebody to come and help you take the split, and they can then take the bees home. Okay, a little bit of smoke helps to clear the bees out of the way. It's a great tool like that. Now, we cut the wax out of a frame, we put it back in the center here. So it'll be super interesting to see what they have built on that. So first of all, let's choose a frame to lift. Here we go. And we're going to take 3 or 4 frames out of here and put it in to the other box. Now we've been moving this hive around, so I'm just going to adjust the adjustable leg here to steady it up. There we go. Now we're going to slowly, carefully just lift up this frame with the J tool and see what's going on. Okay, I'm seeing drones. So a lot of male bees on this frame. See how they stick out proud of the frame like little humps. So that is the drones going through their metamorphosis, growing their wings, and they'll emerge out of their cocoons in another few days. And here we have workers. So if we make sure there's eggs in both of these hives, then we don't actually need to find the queen. However, I wouldn't mind leaving her with the parent colony, keep it nice and strong, so we continue to get a honey harvest. So I'm going to see if I can spot the queen as we go. I'm not seeing it here. I'm seeing a lot of brood and drone brood on this frame. And if I look down the cells, I can see bee eggs. So that's fantastic. So we might take that frame complete with all of the nurse bees on it and put it into our new split. So here we go, the first frame going into our split. It's got a bunch of brood on it. It's got a bunch of drones. And it has bee eggs. And some young larvae down here that haven't spun the silk cocoon around themselves yet. And look at the pollen. Give us a thumbs up if you can see that bright orange pollen on that bee's leg in my finger there. Very cool. And we've got some white pollen up here. All the different pollens coming in. Lovely. Then we'll be putting the blank frames back in this one, which will radically reduce the chance of this hive swarming. Now, if as we go we see a queen cell already, then we'll move that into the new split too. And that will speed up the process of this split because the queen will be already underway. We've got a lot of brood on this frame, which is good. We've got a queen cup, see here, and if it was longer, like a peanut shape hanging down, we'd have a look and see if it was sealed off. But there, we could have a little look if I'm careful to see whether there is a queen or an egg in there. No, it's an empty queen cup that they've made in preparation. And we're looking on the other side, keeping a lookout for the queen as we go. And I'm not seeing her. Think of your questions, put it in the comments below. Today we're doing a split as part of spring management. Also gives us another hive, which is fantastic. And this is the frame that we cut the wax out of in a show and tell a few live streams back. And wow, they drew that out very quickly. Look at that. Lots of eggs down the cells. That may not be the frame. It looks like it's been used too many times. I'm going to have a look at one more. See which frame it was we cut some wax out of. There we go. Not that one, but look at that brood. This hive's going to boom in numbers because there's brood all the way across this frame. Fantastic. Same on the other side. You can see the difference between cap brood. The honey is a little more translucent in its capping, but you've got a sort of papery-like texture on top of the brood. And they're all worker brood too, which is great. Got a waggle dance going on here, telling the bees something. It's their communication. They do a mixture of dance and percussion, actually, vibrations through the comb to help tell the bees where to go and get the flowers and where the good forage is. Pollen and nectar that they need to bring back to the hive to keep the colony going. Wow. It's looking really good, really healthy. Okay. We have to decide which frames we're going to give to the new colony. It's kind of hard to decide sometimes. a lot of bee bread in here, so that's nice. We've got the pollen stores that they're fermenting into bee bread, and that's the primary food for the new larvae. The worker brood, that is. They don't feed that. If they're raising a queen, they'll continue to feed the young larvae royal jelly for its entire gestation, and that will turn it into a queen. Very nice. So the aim of the game is to have, if you're doing an even split, you'd take out half of these frames and put it in another box and make sure there's eggs on both, and you may or may not have to find the queen depending on your strategy, whether you're introducing a new queen or not. Is there any questions?
Yeah, gosh, there's some great questions coming in, Seeds, and I think the sound's pretty good. I think we're having a few issues, but hopefully we're sorted now, I think. This is a good one, Seed. You just before had that empty queen cup, and Bethany was wondering, like, hypothetically, is that a really good frame to then put into the new hive?
If it had a young larvae in, they were feeding up and turning it into a queen, or it was already capped, so it was longer, hanging down as a peanut shape and capped off, then I'd say yes. But if it's just a queen cup, the bees can make them very quickly, so it's not much of a helping hand at this point. Now, I'll keep looking though, because we might find a queen cell if we're lucky. There's the queen here. Now, interestingly enough, I'm sure this hive had a queen with a white mark on it. Or yellow, it is.
Oh, yeah, see, because we were doing it last week, didn't we? Oh.
So have we got a second queen in this hive? That is super interesting. But that is a big, healthy queen. It looks like it's not a young virgin. I wonder, it was looking like the mark was almost wearing off. Let's have a look. Oh no, it's got, the mysteries, you always find new things in a hive. It would be interesting if there was more than one queen in here. In fact, what I'm going to do is put that frame over here and keep looking, just in case we do find a second one. Normally there's one queen, and she will reign in the hive for up to 6 years, usually 3 or 4, and then she'll be superseded.
Right. Seeds, Michael's wondering, so if you leave the original queen and move the frames like what you're doing now, you can get another hive. So this is this is a split. I think some people don't quite get the whole thing of the split and why you're doing the split.
Okay, today we're taking a split so that we get another hive, and also to reduce the primary trigger of swarming. If we did nothing with this hive, it would swarm in springtime, and spring's just around the corner here. There's a lot of bees building up, and the primary trigger for swarming is not enough cells for the queen to lay her eggs in. So typically it gets very crowded, you've got a lot of honey stores, and the things you'll need to do is harvest some honey in the springtime, make some space in the brood nest. And this is my favourite way to make some space in the brood nest to reduce swarming, and you also get another hive out of it, which if you don't want one, someone else surely will. So today we're doing what's called a hive split, where we're literally splitting the brood between 2 boxes, and then we'll put the hive back together. If there is eggs in both, the one without the queen, they will raise a new queen from usually. Or you can buy in a queen in a little queen cage like that, and that's a great thing to do if you want some known genetics and nice, calm production. This is just an empty queen cage, so today we're going to let them raise their own queen. Unless we can find 2 in here, you never know your luck. Okay, we'll keep going, but keep asking questions. Put them in the comments below. It's fantastic. We've got questions from all over the world. Let us know whereabouts in the world you're tuning in from as well. Super interesting to us. We've got a global audience in 130 countries or so of people with flow hives. So it's amazing to learn how it is for you and all the things you do in your country for beekeeping. I've learnt so much over the years. Okay, now this one's got a lot of drone on it, drone brood right out to the edge. I don't think I'll give the new split that frame. You get a bunch of males who typically don't do much housework. They kind of just eat a lot and hope to go on a mating flight one day. But I'm looking for that queen that's got the mark on it, just in case we do actually have two queens in here already. Can happen. Okay. Keep the questions coming in.
Cedar, Kate's wondering, how do you prevent drift if if your hives are next to each other?
Okay, you won't actually. You need your hives about 10 metres apart if you don't want drift. And in this case, one of the tips is to use the returning flight path to your advantage to prop up the weak colony. So what I'm going to do before I put these hives back together and walk away is actually switch the positions. So I'm going to pick up this hive and put it where that one is. The reason I'm going to do that is the weaker one will then get the returning foragers. So our new split will be the weaker hive, and the returning foragers will then return to that and it'll boost those numbers. And the parent colony, which I'll leave a bit stronger, will have heaps of bees ready to emerge and become the new foragers. So you don't have to do it like that. There's many ways to take a split. I used to split vertically in that more like a commercial apiary yard, where I put the box on top of another one and run the entrance in the other direction. Or you can run it in the same direction, whatever you like. There's lots of different ways. But the main thing is you're taking two frames out of one, putting them into another, either introducing a queen or making sure they have eggs so they can raise their own. And there's all sorts of weird and wonderful ways to achieve that. But this is what I find the easiest way. Take some frames out of here, put them over there, put them back together, and hopefully the one without the queen will raise a new one.
Cedar, Kathleen's in Southern California and just wondering, when is the best time of the year to make a split?
So the best time of year is when there's a lot of bees in your box. You open the observation windows like we did earlier, you can hardly see the comb. The bees are really building up and there's an abundance of nectar around. In most parts of the world that is the springtime. However, around here we get some interesting nectar flows almost all year round in different parts by the coast here, and we can do splits sometimes midwinter here, and other times we're splitting in summer or later. So it really does just depend on your seasonality, but pretty much unanimous, spring is good in most parts of the world. Okay, we'll put that one back in and chime in with your questions.
Cedar, we always get this question and it's always about your hands without gloves. You obviously wear a jacket and you wear protective gear, but you usually don't beekeep in gloves.
Yes, as you get experience as a beekeeper, you can start to experiment with taking your gloves off. When you do though, you are risking some stings. Now, I don't mind a couple of stings on my hands. I don't like them on my face, so you'll see me always wearing a bee jacket. In this case, I'm wearing this one with the clear view, which is a new one I've just opened. So that's why it's looking so clean today. And one little tip, if you've got the clear view veil, which is an innovation we came up with, you can pull it back closer to your face with this Velcro up here, and that way you get less reflection. If it's down there, you tend to get a little bit of reflection and you can't see quite as well as when you pop it back closer like that.
Oh, that's great, Seeds, because Debbie and Bega was thinking about buying one of these hoods and just wondering what your thoughts were on wearing one.
Oh, it's great, especially when you're doing a hive split like this. You really need to get down and see in the bottom of the cells for those little eggs, and having the clarity really helps. And if you wear glasses, wear those too, because the eggs are very small in the bottom of the cells. Sometimes when you're looking through mesh, it's just a bit hard to see those eggs.
Great. Now see, this might be tricky. Lynn's wondering why do you think they've seen very few bees and butterflies this year? And I'm not quite sure where Lynn is.
Okay, so there is an insect crisis in the world. Some places are reporting 90% loss in insects. And it's no wonder in a way, because humans have sprayed insecticide on the Earth's surface. So it's no wonder that the insects are having trouble. It's really important that we create safe habitat for them, and that's one of the reasons why we've created the beekeeper.org, is we're raising funds for habitat for all of our pollinating insects as well as everything else that needs habitat, including us. Without our environment, without the interconnectedness of all the species, then we will also die out. So we're losing species we don't even know we had. So many insect species on the brink of extinction. It's really important that humans change their tune at this point. And if you want to do something about it personally, then put away the sprays, get out the habitat, create areas in your yard that really foster insects, all types of insects, including these pollinating ones and the honeybees. It's quite an important issue of our time.
Right, and I've just got a little message from Leah. We have Leah and Sophie who all do the backup of when we're doing these lives, and Leah's just saying, just to let people know on Instagram that we will, if the sound is cutting in and out, we will have a clear recording that we'll post after the live. It seems maybe from Cedar, yeah, that when maybe you bend down a bit, Seed, so I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if you can beekeep with a straight neck, I don't know. It might be really hard. But anyway, we will post it, so sorry about that, guys, but it seems to be coming in and out.
Okay.
All other channels are good.
So if you're on Instagram, jump across to one of the other channels. We got TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, and you will get a clear audio stream. Okay, look at this. This has got a lot of brood on it. It's also got that queen cup we were looking at. Where is it? There. So we may as well put that in the new one. I haven't seen a queen cell. It's not much of a help because it doesn't have anything in it yet, but it's still a start, I suppose. Got a lot of bees on it, which is great because we need to transfer the frames with bees in order for the hive to have enough bees to look after the young brood. There we go, so we've got 3 frames so far. One's got the queen on it. I actually don't want to put her in this box. So that frame's going to come back. Now we do need to make sure we've got eggs in both hives, or at least in the hive without the queen, so they can raise a new queen from that. This frame we haven't had a look at yet. Let's see what's going on. It's the edge frame, and what we've got is a lot of honey stores, which you can see in these areas. Nice honey stores up here that they've capped off, and we have some pollen stores too. Now that's interesting. The inner cover just fell over and a bee stung me in reaction to the sound. Have a look at this. And I wouldn't recommend doing this, but a bee can actually pull out its stinger if you let it. So I'm going to see if it will pull the stinger out. Of course, I'll get a bit more venom. I'm okay with that. Wear your gloves if you need a beekeeping. Protect yourself. I'm going to see if this bee can actually get its stinger out. Because bees often die when they sting. They have a barbed stinger and it pulls out some of their insides, and that's the end of their life. However, a bee can often get the stinger out if you're patient. Don't know if you can get a close-up of that. It's working on it. They usually do a circular motion, which this one isn't. So I'm not sure if its tactics are good or not. But normally they walk around in circles and slowly twist their stinger out. Give us a thumbs up if you think this bee is going to get away with its stinger, or whether it's going to leave it behind. There it goes, it's trying to fly off with it. That's not a very good tactic. Oh, there we go, it's getting some circular motion now, that's better. That'll help you. And it's trying. But interestingly enough, it's not actually hurting.
Oh.
It did when it initially put its stinger in, but it's not now.
You're having your bee tox.
So any more questions as we wait for this bee to remove its stinger from my wrist?
Yeah. Marlene wants to know, do you have to move the split more than 3 kilometres away from the original hive?
No, you don't. So I'm going to leave it right here. In fact, I'm going to switch the positions, and the returning foragers will then go to our weaker new little split, which will have less bees than the parent colony. And if you wanted to move it across the other side of your yard, you could, but that would weaken that colony further, and it would just be a bit slower for them to get back on their feet. And you could move it 3 kilometres away if you wanted to, but again, you're going to lose those returning foragers, so the split will be a bit slower to get up and going. Now that bee's working hard to remove its stinger from my wrist. Perhaps my skin is a little too leathery there, but we'll give it a good go and see if it can make it. Any more questions?
Great. Now Bonnie, this is a great question. Bonnie's saying they watch their bees, love watching them through the window of the Flow Super, but notice like there'll be nectar in a cell one day, then it'll be gone the next. And so Bonnie's question is, do the bees move honey around because it just seems to change all the time?
So they do, and it's great to watch the rear window, which you can see here on this hive. And this pattern will change as the day goes, and you'll often see nectar filling up throughout the day, and then it'll reduce in the evening and overnight and be gone again the next day. And that's them spreading that nectar out and using surface area to help evaporate, and then they'll be condensing that nectar further in to create nice thick honey, and they'll keep repeating the process until they've filled up all the way out to these extremities here. So this window and the side windows tell a story, and if you tune in with it over time as you're doing, which is fantastic to hear, you can really get a good gauge on when it's time to take away some of their honey and share in their amazing spoils.
Tip Cedar, for bees that are angry, what can you do?
So this bee here has got angry. We knocked over the inner cover, and at that moment it got a fright and actually stung me, which is interesting in itself. And if you've got a whole hive of angry bees, not like this single one here, you'll notice they'll be really banging into your veil as you go. You'll have your gloves on, otherwise you get lots of stings. And in an extreme case, they'll be really trying to sting you through your clothes and your suit and everything. And that's quite an aggressive trait that is nice to remove from your apiary if you can. And to do that, you'll need to take away the old queen and introduce a new one. And a month later, the new one's genetics and the drone she's mated with will take over and hopefully have a nice, calm, gentle, genetic response, which will then be a joy to look after like this, except for this one bee, which is having a little bit of trouble getting its stinger out. Bad luck, it just flew off and left its stinger behind. It tried hard. Often you can relax into it and they will leave there and they'll take their stinger with them. Now, that little stinger is still pulsing, so some people do have bad reactions to bee stings like they do have to peanuts and all sorts, so careful with this stuff, people. Don't do what I'm doing. But I'm going to scrape across that and just scrape that stinger out like that so I don't squeeze any more venom out of the venom sac on the end of the stinger. So that's where it was stinging. The stinger is now on the end of my hive tool there. And bad luck for the bee, it didn't manage to retrieve it. Okay, back to our split. Now, at this point, if you've been standing here yabbering on like I have been, we need to top up the smoker and keep it going. You see, it's just about gone out.
Oh,
and we're going to need that. We may not, but we may need it. So we might just add a little bit more fuel to that, which I've put on the ground here. Let's see if we can get it going again. Okay, if you've left it too long, sometimes it's quicker just to relight it. Keep your questions coming in. Fantastic questions today, people. We've got people on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. And if you're on Instagram, apparently the sound's been dropping out a little bit, so jump across to one of the other channels and you'll get a better audio stream. Okay, it's just going. If I keep puffing it, it will get going again.
Well, it's a perfect time. Bethany, her question was just like, how do you keep your smoker going? Hers keeps going out. So wondering what you're putting in your smoker.
Okay, this is just garden mulch, and obviously it did go out. So if you do want a longer lasting smoker, then use a denser bark off a tree. Often I use, here we have the tallowood bark, which I have alongside my apiary at home, lots of those tallowood trees, and it's a dense fibrous bark and that lasts a very long time. Pine needles like this, they're easy to light, but they go out pretty quickly. So it could be a good idea to bolster it with something else. Some people just use a roll of cardboard. If you're going to do that, make sure it doesn't have coloured printing on it. You don't want to be blowing some strange chemicals into your hive. Okay, it's slowly getting going again. In this case, lighting it again would have been probably quicker.
Seeds, you mentioned, I think at the start, and maybe the sound had dropped out, but Tammy was just wondering, you mentioned before about putting oil into the tray. Was it cooking oil that you mentioned?
Yes, so just any old cooking oil will work. In fact, I used to use the stuff from behind chip shops because I ran my car on it for 20 years or so. So I'd just use the recycled cooking oil. Or if you've been cooking up a deep fry at home, you could use that. Or you can just purchase some cheap new cooking oil to put in your tray below. That will help catch some of the beetles, which if you are weakening your colony by taking a split, or if they've weakened themselves by half of them swarming, then put some cooking oil in the tray and help catch some of those pesky small hive beetles.
Right, here, some great questions. Kate's also asking, so if the flow frames are full, is it okay to drain them before the split, or is it best to leave some honey for the parent hive?
You can take out some honey. That will make the box lighter to lift off. So yeah, you might like to take 1 or 2 or 3 frames of honey, but it's up to you. If you do that, I would probably wait a couple of days before you do your split, just for them to clean everything up, so you don't have a lot of work to do with half the bees suddenly missing as well. Okay. Now, we're going to continue with our hive split. And make sure we have resources in both, and then we're going to put the hives back together, making sure all frames are in and there's no blank spaces. Then we're going to switch the colony's positions to make sure the weaker colony gets the returning foragers.
And if, Seed, when you were saying like the bees have a very short lifespan, Lockie's wondering, where do the bodies go? Is it like a designated graveyard like ants have?
So you can see a few down here at the entrance actually that have come out of the hive. Now, people often get worried about dead bees at the entrance, but it's quite normal. And in a colony that might be 30 or 40,000 strong, when they're foraging a lot, that means you're going to, because the forager bees only last, say, 4 to 6 weeks, they have to replenish that. So in 4 to 6 weeks, you're going to find perhaps 40,000 dead bees. But of course, they don't all make it back to the hive. Sometimes they're out there collecting water as one of their last jobs and they won't make it back, and that's often why you see bees on their last legs by the waterside. When they die in the hive, the undertakers will take them out and try and drag them as far away as they can for disease reasons. A bee can almost carry another bee, so you'll see them flying just a metre away, trying to pick them up and fly another metre and trying to get them further away, just in case there was any pathogens. So they're very hygienic like that. Keep the questions coming in.
See, different, like with the new young queen, because the new queen's so much smaller, could she get through the queen excluder and then end up in the flow frames?
Yes, so that does happen. Occasionally, it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally a queen will sneak through this 4.3mm gap here when she's young and hasn't quite got the size of a fully fledged queen. Then you can end up with a queen laying in your flow frames, in which case you'll need to either remove this excluder or you'll need to pull it apart, find the queen, move her downstairs, or if you can't find her, you can take all the bees down to the bottom box, put the excluder back in, and then hopefully she won't get back up there again. We did do one live stream on exactly that topic because we found that happened in one of the hives here in the apiary.
See, if there's, Happy's wondering, if there's lots of drone cells in the hive, do you remove the frame completely?
If there's lots of drone cells,
Yeah.
I'll just leave them in. It depends. Like if you've got varroa in your area, then some people might be strategically trying to get the bees to raise drones by putting foundation in that is drone size and removing them along with a lot of varroa and freezing them or getting rid of them, putting the frame back in again. So we don't have varroa here yet, but that's a mechanical method of reducing varroa. But in this case, I'm just going to let the bees do their thing, raise those drones as they see fit. We're doing naturally drawn comb. All of these frames have no foundation. They can do whatever they like in there. They can raise drones by creating drone-sized cells, and the queen can then lay unfertilised eggs which will turn into the male bees, the drones. So I think it's a nice way to go, naturally drawn, for a number of reasons. But one of them is they can size the cells just how they like for their own purposes, rather than giving them a specific size and hoping that'll suit them.
Great. Does Australia have killer bee mixed breeds like they do in America?
We do not have the Africanized bees here as far as I know, and I've heard they're pretty wild, so careful around Africanized bees. Apparently they can have very aggressive tendencies. Hold on, that is the new frame. A couple of weeks ago, they've already made it their own and drawn out all of this comb. Just created it from a blank frame. You can see a bunch of combs already for brood. It's already going dark around here. We've recycled a bunch of wax in the hive as well, which also makes it dark. And we've got another little queen cup on the bottom there. It's a bit hard to see where there's a larva in it, right above this bottom bar here. I don't know if you can see in there. So I will just put that one into the new hive also, just in case it gives them a jump start. Got some food on the other side too. So now we've got our frames, but I want to put one back because this one here had the queen on it, I'm unlucky, she would have wandered off and I can't, and I won't be able to find her, but let's have a look and see. Making sure the queen is on here still. Okay, looking around. There's a thumbs up if you can see her on the frame. Not to be confused with drone bees like this one. Got a long abdomen, which is just near my finger there. She's not marked, which is strange because a couple of weeks ago we found this hive had a marked queen with a yellow dot on her thorax. So perhaps they've superseded already. Raise a new one, and away they go. But to me, she's already worn the hairs off her back plate. She's fully sized. I think she's been in there a little while. So it leaves a question mark. You're always learning something new, finding more questions when you open a hive. So that one we're going to put back in the parent colony. I want to make sure this hive has the queen to get a good honey crop on it this season. The frames are almost full. I don't want to weaken it too much. So there we have a nice brood nest in the centre. This is another thing, another and I like to keep about 3 frames in the centre of a nice brood nest, and then you can flip the board after that. Just if you get a chilled night, you want to make sure you've got a nice brood nest in the centre there, and then the pollen and honey resources will be out towards the edge with a frame in between, and that will just help them grow a nice space. Not too long time because they'll use this as a guide. This one's got a lot of honey on it, so that'll be good resources here for these bees. I'm going to put a blank frame right in between, leaving those very little brood on it in the centre. Now, I could do an even split, but in this case I'm going to keep this colony a little bit smaller and see how we go. So I can keep this one stronger. So this one, this is going to get 3 new frames. Here and here and over on this edge. And important to make sure the frames are pressed together with any excess space. At first you might think that we've got too much space in our brood nest. We've been doing this in a while. We did that on purpose. They get tight after a while, especially the 10 framers, the later size. And you just really want that bit of extra space. It makes it a lot easier as the inbars put in wax and so on. And it seems to work very nicely. Transfer the space to either side by pushing the frames together, and that will keep the spacing correct for the frames we're drawing out. There it is there. Now this one without the queen does have frame with eggs in the bottom. So the cells with eggs in the bottom. Over the next few weeks we'll check in to see if they indeed do save the new queen, or whether they don't get it together. Sometimes they don't, but mostly they do. So this one is a small little colony now, with just 3 frames, and we'll leave them right in the centre. Putting the other frame on either side like this. That'll just assist them to have their brood nest together. Okay. Then we can start putting these hives back together. Any more questions coming in?
Yeah, so did Aussie's wondering, Aussie Rob, wondering, is it if you're going to check your hive regularly, is that a good way to get used to you?
Yes, but more importantly, for you to get used to your bees. So I really do recommend, in the beginning, getting in there a lot, getting really comfortable. It will really accelerate your beekeeping, give you the confidence to get in there and manage your hive when there is an issue. So starting with a smaller colony, I would always suggest, because it's just a bit easier to do your brood inspections in the beginning with a very nice small colony like this, and you can then enjoy watching it build up, and it gives you the confidence rather than starting with a big boomer of a hive with multiple boxes and you've got to pull them all off and get in there. It's a little bit daunting as your first experience. If you start like this, which is kind of like a nucleus hive or taking a split, then you get to get in there often just by popping the lid off and watch them draw their comb. And when the numbers are built up, you can then go ahead and put on your honey super. In this case, it'll be our flow hive super. I'm going to leave this in this configuration now with the inner cover right on top. So I'm not going to put a honey super on this yet because there's not enough bees to service that large area. We'll be doing them a disservice by adding too much space for them to keep warm. The nights are still cold, so we don't want to do that. We will just add a inner cover like that and say good luck raising your new queen. And that is our new split. I'll just go over one more thing, because if you are buying in a queen, we know we put the queen in that box. We'll assume there's no queen in here, and I'll just run through how you would install your queen. You would come back the next day after the bees had realised they don't have a queen. You would have ordered a queen in the mail in a little cage like this. We'll have a candy plug at the end. There'll be 5 or so escort bees that will be feeding her in the mail. When it arrives, you'll wet your fingers and rub a little bit on the outside of the cage so that they can get a little bit of water. They'll be thirsty after travelling in the post. Then you'll put it between 2 frames like this, choosing a position where there isn't any honey that's going to squish into the cage. And you'll put it like this with the entrance on the upper side, but slightly down just in case it's too hot. You want that candy melting outwards and not in covering your new queen. So entrance up on the upside, but slightly pointing down like that. Perfect. Then you'll walk away, the lid on, and you'll come back in a week or so and check if your new queen is laying eggs or not. Okay, that's it. I'll just leave that in there even though it's empty. Bees won't know the difference. And now we just need to put this hive back together. We've successfully added 3 blank frames and we've taken a bunch of bees away, and that'll help reduce swarming.
Cedar, Simon's wondering, Simon's in Victoria where the temperatures are around sort of 10 to 20 degrees at the moment, with spring sort of around the corner. Simon's question is, when would be a good time to take off the entrance reducer that they've had on through the winter?
Okay, so as soon as you get a lot of activity, at the entrance, then you can take off your entrance reducer. Of course, if you're getting robbing or anything, you can put it back on, but generally in Australia here where we are, we don't use them at all, and in the colder regions they might use them over the winter months and then take them off as the spring nectar is available and the bees respond to that, and you get a lot of activity at the hive entrance.
Right. Cedar, Tex has got a bit of a problem with bees, a hive and a tree trunk right near the house.
You might just need to come a little closer and say that again.
Sorry,
we've got our roving mic this time.
Really professional. Hello, this is Trace from Flow Hive. No, Tex is wondering, he's got a beehive near his house and a tree trunk, wondering which is the best way to move it, because in the warmer months the bees start sort of hanging around and getting into the house to want water. So how to move a hive out of a tree trunk?
Okay, that is a very challenging situation to get bees out of a tree trunk. I've tried all sorts of things over the years, and the best technique I've found is a tip from my brother, who's an arborist. If you want to get bees out of a tree hollow, you throw in a cat and dog flea collar, or even better, a cattle tick ear tag. They've got strong chemicals on them. They won't kill the bees, but they'll annoy them sufficiently, and a month or 2 later they will pack up shop and leave. And I've had that work very successfully, and that's the easiest way to get bees out of a cavity. Now there are other methods, like sort of creating a pipe from their entrance and a one-way bee valve. Let's say you made a cone of mesh in that pipe. You could do it in a clear pipe so you can watch it. And the bees will come out through that little cone. It's a bit like a crab pot. They can come out but not back in easily. And you might like to pipe that into a box like this. And eventually they might set up shop in the outside box as all of the bees end up stuck on the outside and the queen wonders what's going on and wanders out too. Fingers crossed. That method hasn't worked that well. I've had it work once out of all the times I've tried it. So I would probably go for the easy method. Just throw one of these annoying flea collars or ear tags in, and fingers crossed those bees will pack up and leave. If you happen to be around, they will actually abscond and do what they normally do when they're swarming, which is land temporarily on a branch. And you might be able to put them in a box like this. So have a hive box ready in case you do get the fortunate luck of being able to house them and having a beehive that is not in the tree anymore, but in an organised box like this we can harvest honey from.
Great. Now Delta's wondering, Delta's bees are either slow or Delta's bees are either slow or reluctant to use the flow frames. Just want some little tips on getting them interested in going back up to the flow super.
Okay, great. I'll show you how to do that. Now, the best thing we have found is patience. So when there's a lot of bees in your box, you open the windows, you see a lot of bees and there's a good nectar flow, you don't need to do anything to the flow frames. The bees will wax them up and start storing honey. And that's all we do and all most people do in the world. However, if you're getting impatient or you want to have a little play and see if you can get them working on the flow frames quicker, then what we've found is give them a bit of wax. Not the honey, what you need is the wax. So that if we were going to use this here, this wax from on top of the frames is great. So what you might like to do is just scrape that off and put it in a clump on the flow frames. That's really out of line and they will quickly recycle. So do it on the window side so you can enjoy watching them, but you're just scraping off the wax off the top of the frames. If they need a super, there'll probably be a bit of wax up here, and push that into the flow frame surface when it's nice and warm from being in the hive. You won't damage the flow frames. The bees will quickly recycle it, use it to wax up those cells in that surrounding area, and away they'll go on that section of the frame. However, you won't get any honey stores until you've got lots of bees in your box and a good nectar flow, just like any kind of beekeeping.
Right. Now, do I need to come down by your microphone again, Seeds?
Yes.
Thanks. Do queen bees ever take over another already full hive and then kill the queen that's in the existing hive?
I have heard of that happening. It doesn't happen that often. It's more likely you can get robbing where you've got a colony that's died out and they're going in to steal all the gold and nick off and leave that hive to its demise. So, but yes, you can get a situation where one hive will actually take over another. We're going to start putting this hive back together now. So if you've got time for a couple more questions, chime in as we put this hive back together. Trace will be reading them out, and just bear with us because we do have one microphone issue on Instagram. If you do want to get a better audio stream, jump across to one of our other channels. This one, the box is going back on, so we're going to smoke some of these bees. Again, we spoke too long. We're only using pine needles and we have run out, but we're going to need some smoke to get the bees out of that big clump, because if we just chuck them straight on top, we might squash some of them. So let's refuel our smoker again, and then we'll be able to blow some smoke right there and you'll watch the bees. Actually, that's the top side, which they can stay there, but the bottom side's similar. If you have a look around here, there is a lot of bees there. And we want them out of the way so they don't get squashed as we put our hive back together. Thanks for all your great questions. We've got time for a couple more.
Yeah, look, this one's coming from Canada, as they'll soon be approaching winter. Just wondering, any tips or ideas for looking after the flow hive or taking off the super?
Okay, Northern Hemisphere is opposite to us with the winter approaching. So you're just about to start your fall. So the main thing you'll be doing in Canada is making sure there's enough honey stores for the bees to survive a long, cold winter. So ask your local beekeepers or chime in if you know the answer as to how much honey stores a hive will need to survive the winter. Get a few opinions because it will vary, and what you'll need to do then is feed them if they don't have enough honey stores. Typically you'll be leaving a box or two of honey for the long cold winter in Canada. Another tip is take out the excluder so that when the queen moves with the bees, she's not left behind underneath the excluder. Otherwise she might perish and you'll start the spring with no queen. So we do have at the beekeeper.org a lot of cold climate beekeeping information. We're not experts at it here because we don't really get a winter as far as the honeybees are concerned. This is our winter now, and the bees doing a lot of foraging. Now that smoke's worked very well, hasn't it? It's removed all those bees so they don't get squashed, and we can now put our super back on. Just by, wow, there's a lot of bees in this box, which is the reason why we were taking the split in the first place. Lining it up best you can, like that. And now all of those bees are going to head back into the hive. And hopefully we'll still get a good honey source if we only took 3 frames away. We're going to actually shift these positions, which I should have done before I put that heavy honey super on. So, Soph, if you wouldn't mind helping me with this one. This one's nice and light. I can just simply pick that up. And I'm going to move that out of the way for the moment. And with the bee veil, you can just lift under here, and we're going to shift it to that position. So on the side, yep, you're just going to go straight back. That's it. So get a hand when your hive's heavy. Beautiful. Excellent. And because we're drawing naturally drawn frames, we're going to want to get our level in the sideways direction correct. So the bees will draw straight down and not wonky comb onto the other frame next door. So that's this level here, which you can see is almost about right. We just make that a little, got a good level there now. And this one's for the honey harvesting, which can drop a little bit. So I'm going to rock the hive this way temporarily and adjust this leg here so we're dropping the front. Okay, it's more stable. We have the level bubble perfectly in the middle now, and we've got it in the middle at the back. So this hive's well set up for both naturally drawn comb, the sideways direction, and for honey harvesting, which we'll hopefully be doing from this hive in the coming weeks. Beautiful. And the other hive is going to go right here where the original hive was, in which case it will, and its numbers will be boosted. As it doesn't have a queen, it's a vulnerable time where we don't have a whole lot of bees to do all the work. So some of the returning foragers will actually be converting into nurse bees and things like that, to keep the hive going. So same thing here, you need to adjust it so the level's in the middle. As you can see, it is almost, you could just raise it slightly on this side by undoing this one a little bit. There it is. Beautiful, and that's it. We've successfully done our split. Got the weaker colony in the original flight path, and we've got a lot of bees in this hive still. We'll see how this little hive goes raising their own queen.
Fantastic. Steve, will you just leave that other hive, will you just leave the split there now? The one that you've just done, and will that just, you're going to leave that one there, and will you move this hive, or is it okay right next to it?
They'll be fine right next to each other. This one here is in the original flight path. Bees are incredible at geolocating. A lot of the foragers are going to return to this hive now, which is what we want because it is the weaker colony. So you can use that to your advantage. You can shuffle the positions. If this hive isn't getting enough bees, you could actually move that one further away. Then the returning foragers would have no choice but to go into this one. Now there's a lot of bees there. We're going to need to use our smoke again in order to get them out of the way, and we could even use our bee brush. So mixture of brushing and smoking will get the bees out of the way for us to put our hive back together. Sometimes you just add a bit of a whiff of smoke around and then wait, and a lot of the bees will go in.
Alright. Steve, any tips you often mention at cross comb or wonky comb? I keep forgetting about the microphone. Any tips on dealing with cross comb or wonky comb, as you call it?
Okay, if you've got cross comb from one frame to the other, and it's really bad, as in you can't remove the frames, then the tip would be use rubber bands to get the good sections with brood back in position. Any bit of honey that's out of line you can just cut off and take back to the kitchen and give the bees another go at building straight comb. But typically most of them are straight and you've just got a couple that are starting to wander, in which case you can use your hive tool just to press the comb back onto the comb guide, and the bees will do a great job of then connecting it back to the wooden frame. They'll get the idea. All of these frames you saw today had no foundation. The frames were nice and straight, so once you've got them going straight, they should then continue. It's a little bit more work in the hive in the beginning, but a lot less work at night in the shed, waxing and wiring frames. Also gives the bees their natural ability to size themselves for themselves, which some believe has a health benefit for the bees as well. I'm going to add a little bit more smoke fuel again before we close this hive up. Don't burn yourself, wear your gloves, don't do what I do. A bit wet, those pine needles, but let's see if they'll get going enough to get these bees back in their box so we can put the lid back on. There we go. That's better. Down you go. Sorry about the disruption today, but it'll mean you get to stay rather than half of you having to nick off and find another home.
But everyone's asking about your Clearview hood and how they get hold of it.
Okay, give us a call, drop us a line, or have a look on the website. We've got the option of the Clearview. It comes with both sets, so if this isn't working for you, you can just simply zip in the mesh. So you've got choices there. I find this great if you've got to look through and find bee eggs in the bottom. It doesn't seem to fog up, but let's say you're beekeeping in the winter time and you're getting fogging, then you could swap to the mesh, for instance. We've got the mesh down here to limit fogging, and we've also put an anti-fog coating on it. One tip with it is, I think, pull it close to your face, and that way you get less reflection. If you have it down there, it's not too bad actually, but you do get a little more reflections off the screen. And pulling it there, you get hardly any, and you get a nice clear view. Okay. Great, so that worked. We've got a lot of the bees in. We can now seize that opportunity where there's none around the edges just to pop back on this inner cover here. Beautiful. Now we've got a few bees on top, so we're going to need to brush them away. We don't want them stuck under the roof because there's no way out and they'll perish under there. Brush those bees off there, and then we can put our gabled roof back on. There it is. Cheeky bees, off you go. Thanks for all your great questions today. We've got time for another one as we just close up these hives.
Great. A good one to end on seeds because people are wondering, so now you've done that split, when are you going to inspect that split?
Okay, if you've just done a new split, then you're going to need to look at it in, well, let's see. It may take several days for them to create a queen cell, raise a queen. Then the gestation of a queen is 16 days. Then it might take a week, depending on the weather, for her to mate. So you're not going to be seeing any eggs for 16 days plus about a week. So that's when you want to get in there, do an inspection, make sure you do have a laying queen. If there's not, give them another go by transferring another frame with eggs on it from the parent hive, and if that fails, you could always merge them back together again. But generally it works, and the bees will raise a new queen. Okay, there we have it, our new little split in the garden. Beautiful. So, fingers crossed they do a great job of raising their own queen, and at the same time, because we've only taken 3 frames out, I think we'll get good honey stores and good harvests from this hive as well. Thanks for watching. Tune in again, same time next week. Let us know what you'd like us to cover. We're always interested in new beekeeping topics, so we can help the learning, and it also helps us as well. We've learnt so much from all of you out there. If you're chiming in and helping answer questions, that's fantastic. We love all of you that do that. It just creates an amazing learning on a global scale. We can all help each other